On November 22, 1988, the steel doors of a hangar in Palmdale, California, opened. The journalists present didn't just see an aircraft emerge. They witnessed a geometric impossibility, a flawless black boomerang, entirely devoid of a tail or a central fuselage. The B-2 Spirit looked like nothing humanity had ever constructed. The true anomaly wasn't the bomber's shape. The unspoken history of the B-2 isn't about what the government built. It is a story about the exact science the military-industrial complex had to suppress, confiscate, and hide from civilian universities so this machine could exist. According to the laws of aerodynamics taught in every public university, the B-2 simply should not fly. Classical physics dictated that a pure flying wing was fatally unstable. An aircraft with no vertical stabilizers, designed with jagged angles to absorb radar waves, should immediately spin and fall from the sky. For public science, controlling that anomaly would require reflexes no human possessed. While civilian professors taught the limits of what was possible, intelligence agencies operated under different physical laws. To get the B-2 off the ground, the government didn't just need infinite money. They engineered an impenetrable chasm between public knowledge and military reality. They activated SAPs, special access programs. These black projects were so deep that not even the congressional committees writing the checks knew what physics were being manipulated. Instead of sharing innovation, the strategy was to drain brilliant minds from the public sector. The government identified aerospace prodigies and mathematicians specializing in digital control systems that universities didn't know existed. They offered bottomless budgets and erased them from the academic world. Their revolutionary equations, the math actually governing the skies, would never be published. They belonged to the Pentagon. This is where the conspiracy of the B-2 reveals itself. Human knowledge was deliberately bifurcated. On one side, stagnant physics left for the masses. On the other, unrestricted, trillion-dollar physics kept locked away. When the B-2 sliced through the clouds in 1989, it wasn't an aeronautical miracle. It was flying, pitch-black proof that the government operated decades ahead of the science taught in school. To understand the depth of this suppression, you have to look at the financial anomaly. The official price tag of a single B-2 Spirit is roughly $2 billion. Let that number sink in. $2 billion for one aircraft. It is the most expensive airplane ever built by human hands, but aerospace engineers looking at the titanium, the composite materials, and the jet engines know a dark truth. The physical parts simply do not add up to that astronomical cost. You're not looking at the price of a bomber. You're looking at the price of absolute secrecy. The B-2 was born inside the darkest corners of the United States black budget. In the 1980s, while the public debated standard taxes and visible government spending, an entirely invisible economy was operating in the shadows. The Department of Defense and the CIA utilized classified funding streams, money completely exempt from standard congressional oversight and public auditing. Politicians were voting on budgets filled with blank lines, redacted pages, and vaguely named projects. They were blindly funding a ghost. Where did the rest of those billions actually go? It didn't go into the wings or the cockpit. It went into the massive infrastructure of suppression. It paid for the strict compartmentalization of thousands of workers, where engineers built individual parts without ever knowing what the final machine looked like. It funded the sprawling underground testing facilities carved deep into the Nevada desert, completely shielded from foreign satellites and civilian eyes. And most importantly, it paid to keep the newly discovered laws of aerodynamics and advanced material sciences strictly quarantined from the public market. This is the ultimate psychological trap of the military-industrial complex. The taxpayer unknowingly funded the exact research that was systematically hidden from them. If the advanced physics used to stabilize the flying wing were released to the civilian sector, it could have revolutionized commercial aviation, energy efficiency, and global transportation overnight. But sharing that knowledge would mean surrendering the ultimate strategic advantage. So the government chose to bury the science and hide the money. The B-2 program proved something far more disturbing than the existence of a stealth bomber. It proved that the government could successfully hide both paradigm-shifting physics and billions of dollars in plain sight. And to keep that massive wing from falling out of the sky, they had to rely on something that went even further. The pilots sitting in the cockpit of the B-2 Spirit are undoubtedly some of the most elite aviators in the world. But they are living a multi-billion-dollar illusion. If they were ever forced to take direct mechanical control of that flying wing, the aircraft would instantly tumble out of the sky. The human brain, no matter how highly trained, simply cannot process the aerodynamic chaos generated by an aircraft entirely lacking vertical stability. The B-2 naturally wants to flip backward and tear itself apart. It is a machine inherently hostile to the classical laws of flight taught in civilian schools. So how does a geometric impossibility stay in the air? The answer lies in the most highly classified fly-by-wire system ever developed by the defense sector. When the pilot pulls the control stick, they aren't actually moving the flaps or the ailerons. They are merely making a polite request to a network of quadruple redundant flight control computers. These computers are the digital guardians of the suppressed physics. They are running the secret mathematical equations that the public was never allowed to see. They calculate the impossible aerodynamics of the wing and make thousands of microscopic, invisible adjustments to the control surfaces every single second just to keep the bomber flying straight. This digital brain is the only thing standing between the B-2 and catastrophic failure. It is the physical manifestation of the knowledge gap between the public and the Pentagon. The military didn't just build a stealth bomber. They built a flying supercomputer required to constantly fight and override the principles of physics the rest of us were taught. The fly-by-wire system is the ultimate gatekeeper of black-budget science. Without those classified algorithms processing the suppressed equations in real time, the aircraft is nothing more than a highly expensive piece of falling metal. By severing the physical link between the human pilot and the airplane, the military-industrial complex achieved total control over the technology. The pilot doesn't need to understand the advanced physics keeping them alive. They just need to obey the machine. And this level of digital isolation leads us to the final anomaly. If they could reclassify the rules of aerodynamics to make a giant wing vanish from radar, what other principles of physics have they quietly reclassified and weaponized? This brings us to the most guarded layer of the B-2 Spirit, hidden deep within the unacknowledged special access programs. For decades, aerospace engineers and physicists have pointed to a specific anomaly in the bomber's design. The massive jet engines buried within the wing produce an immense thermal and acoustic signature, yet the B-2 can vanish from both infrared and acoustic sensors. This is where documented history ends and the pattern begins. Because what keeps resurfacing in the physics community is more unsettling than the aircraft itself. Declassified documents and defense whistleblowers have long suggested that the B-2 utilizes a high-voltage electrostatic charge across its leading edge. By charging the front of the aircraft to millions of volts and the exhaust to the opposite polarity, the military potentially alters the density of the air around the wing. This would drastically reduce aerodynamic drag, shrink the radar cross-section, and soften the sonic boom. Whether this specific mechanism is precisely accurate is not the point. The point is the pattern it reveals. This framework, high-voltage electrostatics manipulating aerodynamics and energy density, keeps resurfacing independently across research communities that have no connection to each other. That kind of convergence is not random. It is the shape of an idea that exists somewhere and keeps leaking out through the cracks. If the Pentagon openly admitted they were using electrostatic principles to manipulate aerodynamics, the entire global energy paradigm would be forced to ask an uncomfortable question. If you can move a $2 billion bomber by manipulating the electrical charge of the air, the assumptions underlying the civilian energy infrastructure become very difficult to defend. That is exactly why the government fears open innovation more than foreign enemies. The B-2 Spirit is not just a weapon of war. It is a flying monument to the knowledge that was separated from you. It is proof that humanity operates inside a two-tier system of scientific reality. We are allowed to have smartphones and commercial jets, while the military-industrial complex holds access to principles of physics that would restructure the foundations of the modern economy. They didn't just classify a bomber, they classified human progress to maintain absolute economic control. But the B-2 wasn't the first time the government panicked and seized revolutionary physics. Decades before this black boomerang ever took flight, federal agents raided a hotel room to confiscate the life's work of another genius who understood these exact same electrical principles. A man who threatened to give free energy to the world. If you want to know what the FBI found in Nikola Tesla's room 40 minutes after he died, and why a man named John G. Trump was brought in to hide it, click the video on your screen right now. The suppression goes much deeper than you think.